L&I Science 540, Human Factors and Information Seeking, Non-Computer Usability Video Report. For my usability object, I decided to use a choke collar for walking my dogs. It's an object that when I use it every single time, it always frustrates me trying to get it to work properly. It's a all-metal collar with a small choke chain and spikes. It's made out of approximately 12 links, which are an interchangeable tiny metal piece with spikes on one end and small hoops that those spikes will fit into on the other. So, I have two large German Shepherds, and walking them together requires a restraint like this, just to ensure their safety and mine while we're out in the road. Make sure they don't chase after cars or drag me off somewhere. They're pretty strong. So the goal here is not to inflict pain or damage, but it's a proven fact that straining against a normal leather collar will cause neck problems in large breed dogs later on in their life. So I have two of these chain collars for that purpose, and it keeps them pretty well in line, but getting them to work right is definitely a problem sometimes. The idea is to remove links until they fit pretty closely around the dog's neck so that when they pull, this chain constricts and the spikes go into their neck to keep them back. It makes them not put a lot of pressure on the leash, which makes them not pull a whole lot. But the idea is to find a happy medium between loose and tight with how many links you're using. Too tight and it hurts the dog, and walking becomes incredibly easy for me because they're not pulling at all, but it's definitely uncomfortable for the animal. And the whole point in the walk is obviously for the dog's enjoyment, so that's not a good option. And if you leave this chain too loose, it really doesn't have a whole lot of effect. It's less noticeable by the animal, but it really doesn't do a whole lot for me because they can pull pretty tightly before they feel any discomfort. One of the main usability problems is that the link size is pretty large, so removing one link is making a pretty significant change in the difference of the length. So I find that using 6 links is a really, really tight fit on the dog, and I really don't like going that tight because I just feel like it's going to cause problems or hurt the animal. And leaving 7 on, like I have here, I have 4 on one side and 3 on the other. There is a permanent link on each side that's a little bit sturdier, that's hooked into the chain. I don't count those. So at 7, it's pretty loose, and it kind of slides around a lot on the animal if they start pulling one way or the other. It'll slide around to one side of their neck, and then when I'm trying to hold them back, I'm pulling them to one side of the road or the other, and it really becomes kind of awkward. So I usually opt for the 7 just to make sure I'm not hurting them. But that sliding does get pretty annoying, and I also find that whether it's tight or loose, the chain is really hard to get on the animal, and as well as removing or adding links. As I said, the spikes just kind of fall into these little holes here. That's not too bad, but you do have to apply a bit of pressure to the links for them to get in there. So I usually like to put one side in and then use that to push the other end out. But the real problem is when you're trying to get this on the dog. One of my German Shepherds is a long-haired, and so he's pretty shaggy. And once you get this thing around their neck, it needs to be tight enough that the spikes are touching their neck to be effective, so you're pretty much lost in the fur. And trying to line up these two little holes and apply enough pressure to get it in there, having to be all the way at the end of this hoop, can become pretty difficult sometimes, especially in the dark. And having it be that hard, the chain with the spike can become pretty dangerous when you're letting the dog play or do anything besides walking where you're in full control, because if that should get caught on anything or on the paws of another dog or something, that could really hurt them if it gets pulled too tight. So especially when you come to a situation where you're taking the dog to a dog park or playing with other dogs somewhere, you want to be putting the collar on when you're walking them and taking it off when they're exercising, and trying to do that multiple times gets pretty frustrating on a regular basis. So we've moved on to, we heard about through our neighbor a new system called the Gentle Leader, which is all cloth but more of a muzzle. It goes around their snout so that it's not applying pressure just on the neck. And that seems to be pretty gentle on the dog and work pretty well, but they're still getting used to it. So hopefully that becomes a better solution. But until then, these are what we have, so just live with it. Thank you.